Welcome back to the Loadout like you never left, because you didn't leave. You stayed right here, as you should have, as I told you to. The Loadout presented by the Daily Dot, capital T, capital D, capital D. I'm still your host, Jared Wynn, bringing you some more esports insight, discussion, debate, diatribe, all those kinds of good things, with more interviews with community members. Now, in Dota 2, the magical world of Dota 2, the other MOBA. Unless, it is the MOBA for you.
I'm sorry, what?
Depends on your,
you called it what?
Yeah. The main
the
MOBA.
Other MOBA.
The main MOBA is Heroes of New Earth, as we all know.
Oh, of course. Yes.
Yeah. The other one is Dota 2. The other one is a team brawler, actually, not a MOBA. So, getting away from that, Ian Barker still joining me here, as he does. And why don't our two Dota guests introduce themselves for the audience?
All right. Hello, my name is Mott. I am a Dota 2 commentator / personality. I've recently just finished casting Dota Pit Season 3 alongside a couple other tournaments with my good friend, Trauf. Trauf, what's up?
Hello, everybody. My name is Mark Trauf. I also commentated Dota Pit with Mott. Dabble from several pro teams here and there, but I'm mainly focused on casting the last 6 months or so. Started out with D2L with AC. Big shout out to that guy. I miss him. But and then now I've done Dota Pit. So yeah, it's been fun.
And a great photo of you, by the way, that we have here.
I can't see it.
You look quite handsome.
Yeah. It's probably
yes.
Pro tip to anybody who wants to go back and catch those Dota Pit matches: do not watch the winners or grand finals because they took about half an hour total between them. Just a real runaway victory.
Maybe that is the reason to watch, actually.
If you cue the Benny Hill theme song music, it'll be
it gets real clowny
pretty
real quick.
entertaining, I bet.
Yeah.
If you like the winning team, it's a great watch, actually.
And I've watched them several times.
A little hint there for those who know Ian's fanboy. He has an EG jersey, by the way, at home. He's wearing it under his shirt right now, actually.
I did wear my EG T-shirt while rooting for Momochi at Evo, so alas, it is dirty. But
his EG cod piece is in the wash, unfortunately. gotta get that nice and clean before he puts that on again. So, the International's coming up. It's a big time for Dota 2. I'm not sure if you guys were aware of that, actually. Might be just springing this on you. But the International's pretty soon.
It's crazy.
Ian, what are our thoughts going into the International? What do we want to talk about? Where do we want to start here? What do you think?
Well, I think the best place to start is at the beginning. $17 million tournament. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the International, I think it's probably hit about where it's going to hit in terms of $1 million increments. I don't think we'll hit $18 million by the time we get there, but a team will go into Seattle and they will leave millionaires overnight. So quite an exciting time for everybody involved. But first, they have to get through 16 other teams, and before that, they have to qualify for the event. So I want to get your thoughts, Mott and Trauf, off the top of the hour. Talking about the wildcard qualifier. Before we even talk about who's going to make it out, the two teams that are going to make it to the group stage, I want to ask you guys, who are you most surprised didn't make it to the international qualifier, wildcard qualifier or otherwise? Mott, we'll go to you first.
I think for me, and I think a lot of people are surprised about, like NIP and Alliance, but for me, I think if you look at the Chinese region, I think Old Boys, the Tongfu OB squad, definitely that's a really good roster. There's a lot of really good players in that team. And so seeing them not make it was pretty shocking to me. YYF, of course, the Long DD, some really good players in that roster. On the other side, Mousesports, I think, is another big shocker. Not super surprising for a couple of people, but I think that's another big one. And then obviously NIP2, but I definitely think Tongfu Old Boys was the one that really stuck out to me. I'm like, wow, I can't believe they didn't make it. So,
yeah.
I think for me, definitely, I would just have to say Alliance, no question. They have TI winners in their roster. They have all the names, they have all the experience. So I think across the board, it was probably the biggest shock that they didn't make it. To be fair, though, in the European qualifier, I think they by far had the most difficult road getting to the wildcard and the actual direct invite, way more than any other region, at least in my opinion. But yeah, long story short, I would say that Alliance are the biggest surprise for me.
Well, the biggest shock, I think, was actually Summer's Rift because of how they didn't make it, not because they didn't make it to begin with. The whole roster change when you can't change rosters before the international thing. That's just, come on, guys. I guess
it was pretty disappointing, to be honest with you, when Summer's Rift didn't make it. Because you look at what they did the past couple of days in BTS Americas, and I think Summer's Rift have been like a seriously strong team. I think Trauf feels the same way as well.
Yeah, well, they've been wrestling with all sorts of roster changes. Even I was playing with them when we went to WCA America, which Mott and I both cast, and then I played in it, and then MLG Austin after that. But then they had a different roster before that, and they tried to get IX Mike before the qualifiers, which just screwed them over. That's a whole crazy other topic that we could go into long hours about. But yeah, that was kind of crazy.
Yeah, certainly looking better, at least for the future. They did look good in that. I watched the BTS Americas tournament, although they did get beat by Root Gaming in the final 3-1. But that was
guys, just one more year to the next international.
Yeah, one more. Yeah, they're just getting ready for the next campaign,
right?
No
problem.
Secret strats.
Well, they got the majors to look forward to now, at least, so that's good.
That's true. Yeah, all they got to do is have a stable roster for those, and they'll be good to go, right?
Exactly.
No problem.
I'm sure they'll pick up Black at the last minute and get sponsored by Mouse Sports just in time for the next qualifier. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Several teams didn't make the wildcard qualifier, but 4 teams did. Most notably, teams like Archon. I'm blanking on the rest at the moment because I forgot to bring up my notes. CDEC was
Vega
the other
Squadron.
one.
I got you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, because I forgot to bring up my notes.
So again, if you didn't catch all those, CDEC, Archon, MVP Phoenix, and Vega Squadron, the 4 wildcard teams.
Yep. Vega Squadron obviously looked quite good against Na'Vi, threw away a couple of leads that didn't bring them there. So 2 teams can make it out. You guys are the experts. Call it. Who is making it out of the wildcard qualifier?
Oof. That is, I feel like this is actually a really tough wild card. Like a lot of people would think, oh, Archon got this, or MVP Phoenix got this, but I don't think it's really tough to, especially with how Vega are playing, and they've added some new players as well in Mag and Solo. Truff and I had the luxury of casting Vega during Dota Pit, and we got to see No One up close and personal. And I think that guy is going to be a top tier mid player one day, if not already. So I think Vega is probably going to be one of them. And then the remaining 3, and I think that's probably a pretty surprising pick for a lot of people, is the fact that I'm going with Vega. And then the remaining 3 is kind of a toss-up. Obviously, I wouldn't mind seeing Archon because I have a lot of friends on that team. MVP Phoenix is a team that I really enjoy watching as well. I still think CDEC's also very good, but I'm going to have to lean towards Archon with that second slot. So
I agree with you with Vega, and I think that Vega will secure one spot. I also think CDEC is going to get the other. I just don't think the other 2 teams are that strong, quite frankly. MVP Phoenix has also gone through some roster changes. I know it hasn't been recent, but it was like right before the qualifiers started. They had like the most solid roster for a year and a half. It was crazy, and then they switched right before the qualifiers, or right before the cutoff, I suppose. And I just don't think that they're as strong as they once were, and I think the results show that. CDEC, I have to admit, I don't follow the Chinese scene that well, but based off of things I've heard from other pro players, they seem to say really good things about CDEC. So that's my probably kind of iffy call, but I'm pretty confident Vega will make it. I could see Archon making it as well, but I probably not. I'm going to go with Vega and CDEC.
Yeah, just based on what I saw from Archon in the BTS Americas, they got beat by I believe that was Summer's Rift. Yeah, beat pretty badly. Yeah, and frankly, after watching the qualifiers earlier, watching CDEC versus eHome for me was a team that should have received the nod, the invite, despite the fact that Newbie was the returning champion. Because if anybody can watch Newbie's games from the past several months and say that they were an invite-worthy team instead of a qualifier team, I will fight them.
Well, we can get into that in a bit. That's the whole subject probably of its own.
Yeah, we most certainly will. So after wildcard qualifier, you guys, we seem agreed on Mott's obviously going to be wrong in this one. It's going to be Vega and CDEC. Once we get into out of the wildcard qualifiers, we're onto the format, and I think a lot of people are actually pretty happy to see the way that the format works out this year. We've got 2 wildcard qualifiers, 2 groups of 8 teams into a double elimination bracket. Best of 1 first in the losers bracket for anybody who isn't familiar with it, and then best of 3 is up to a best of 5 final, and no split matches. Are we all unanimously excited about the fact that we're not splitting a best of 3 over 2 days? Anybody have any complaints that we're not doing that this year?
I mean, that's pretty. I mean, this format is actually what we should have seen last year for sure.
Are you talking about like splitting up, like play one match of the best of 3, then another match some other time?
It was actually, well, if you remember last year, they went into Key Arena and they played, what was it, 2 games or maybe it was just 1 game of a couple of the pivotal best of threes.
I think it was the first game. Yeah.
Was it the first game?
2 games it could have
Oh,
finished.
yeah.
If it was
Yeah,
2.
and
So
then
they played the
2
first
games that they
game
could have
and then
finished.
came back to finish the series the next time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was
I
so
remember that.
stupid. I think I remember that too. Just
Yeah.
like bitching about it, watching.
That
That
was
was
a
the
big
dumbest
thing.
thing ever.
Yeah.
Yep, no, I know a lot of people are upset. So then the question becomes, do you guys, specifically with the 2 groups, is this, the best of 16, or I'm sorry, the group stage 16, a best of 16 final. That would take a while. The 16-person group stage had some storylines of its own. Is this sort of the best format to pick a champion? Do you guys like this better than last year?
Absolutely. I think this is what it should have been last year, for sure. I think one of the biggest complaints was that the teams that were actually playing at the international in the group stages did not get a spot in the main event, regardless of how poorly they performed or how well they performed sometimes. And I think that's a really big thing is like, if you get to the international, you want to be on that big stage. And for a lot of those teams, that just wasn't a possibility because of how they played in the group stages. So at least this gives them a shot to be on the main stage. Yeah, maybe they go out in a best of 1 in the lower bracket. That's fine. At least they get their chance to shine potentially. On top of that, the best of 2s of the group stage is absolutely what should. I mean, that's like the format currently in Dota tournaments. It's like the BO2 group stages, or rather the 2-game series. I have absolutely no problem with this whatsoever. Maybe you could, if they had some extra time, they could do the first lower bracket round 1 of BO3, but that's I guess they don't want to do that. So
I suppose it makes a little bit of sense, them being sort of the last chance people in, that they have the single hardest route to get, to the winner's bracket. It makes a little bit of sense to me.
yeah.
A little bit.
The only thing that's always kind of weird to me is the whole coming to Seattle and playing the wildcard matches. Now I know it
Yeah.
has to make sense based off of ping, because it's almost unfair and unheard of to have a Southeast Asian team playing a U.S. West team and finding a fair ground there. That's just really difficult, unless you go back to Dota 1 roots where you had to do it all the friggin' time, and no one really bitched. But now it's a big issue. And I know there's really no other remedy than to bring the people, but it always just seems so weird to me that you get hyped for about 2 months, roughly like a month and a half. You get there, you play a match, and you're gone. Like it's a hard feeling. At least you get to go. I guess there's that. You get to hang out with your friends, which is great. But
Yeah, it's
that
the
whole
beauty of
aspect is always
esports right there. It's just the beauty of the game we play. With the format cover, maybe getting into some of the teams now who are going to be there, perhaps starting with the qualified teams. We talked about the wildcard qualifiers. There's 4 teams who had to qualify for the event and already have. We have actually the 2011 finalists, oddly enough, got here together. Navi and eHome both in here, as well as Complexity and MVP Hot 6. I want to ask you guys, which of the 4 qualified teams, again, eHome, Complexity, Navi, and MVP Hot 6, do you think has a real shot to make a run at the tournament?
I think Navi. I think personally, Navi or eHome. They're just the 2 strongest teams, the best players. Suniko is actually amazing. That guy is ridiculously good in so many different ways. And that roster is just, even with all the changes they've made, Navi is still a really solid team. Complexity has impressed me recently, but then they played in BTS Americas and they got riggedy wrecked by Summer's Rift. So that's something that kind of happened. And I don't know. I think definitely for me, it's probably Navi. So.
Yeah, and more to that point, Dendi definitely playing at a level I don't think we've seen all year. I watched the finale of the European qualifiers with Vega, and hitting especially that game, I believe it was game 3, where Vega had the game all but wrapped up, and Dendi hits an RP refresher orb to a second RP. Both 3-mans that just cleaned out the team, dropped the rapier on the deck. Just those are things that we haven't seen from him for a little while. I think he was arguably, despite being the fan favorite, arguably mediocre in how he was doing. Some of that, of course, was because the team was in constant flux. They couldn't find their footing. But now that they have things set up, I think both Havost and Dendi, who have always been sort of the core of that team, besides maybe Puppy, really playing at a level that we haven't seen in quite some time.
Yeah, I am expecting good things from Navi out of that bunch too. I would agree with that. I was gonna say Complexity before the BTS, but then I seriously want to entertain the idea of some kind of conspiracy theory with them. Like, did they purposely play like ass in the BTS tournament so that people weren't onto them? Because if you watch the games and if you watch how they played, for instance, the qualifiers or I know from some scrimmage, but I won't give it away. Like, they did not pick anything like they normally did. Nothing. I mean, if you remember them in the qualifiers for the North American region, they were picking like DK mid, Dazzle Fury on every game, and pushing and just deathballing, and no one could stop it. And they picked nothing like that, except maybe one game with a Viper Undying. But it just didn't seem like they were picking, like, I think that they were actually just holding their cards. And it seems like I feel like they're a team that would actually do that. You know, people always entertain that idea and say, oh, I just don't think they're showing their cards, yet most of the time it's bullshit. But I think I could actually see them being a team that's saying, no, because no one really knows about them outside of the NA region. Like, people I mean, of course they know about them, like they know they're in TI, but no one really knows what they're doing. Like, the EU teams have no idea what they really draft, especially the Chinese teams have no idea what they draft. Yeah. So I could easily see them just holding their cards.
I honestly wouldn't begrudge any team right now for holding their cards back. I mean, when EG, for example, played in the finals of Dota Pit Season 3, they drafted about as standard as you possibly can in this meta. You know, they went with the Queen of Pain Earthshaker, and then some kind of fear carry, and then the Winter Wyvern if they could get it, or the Dazzle. I mean, that's about as standard as the meta gets right now in terms of draft picks. And so, and that's sort of a byproduct of what I think the international does to the competitive community. Is like, well, let's see, I can beat Wheel Wreck while whistling with our brand new pocket strat, or I could take a shot at bringing home, $250,000 if I wait till next week and decide that this tournament isn't that important.
Or a lot more than $250,000, actually.
Well, I'm not.
The
suggestion is not that complexity is going to win the international.
Oh,
yeah.
Without pocket strats, they might. Who knows?
Maybe. I mean, if they're really solid pocket strats,
really,
if they're really
the
incredible,
best possible pocket strats for complexity to win TI5. Yeah. I see it happening.
I don't think anybody is really showing strats at this point. Any of the TI teams at the very least, either like EG or Cloud9 or whatever. Like you mentioned, they drafted pretty standard stuff. The only real odd thing was maybe the Clinks draft, but that's pretty common nowadays for EG because Fear just loves that hero and he does so much work with it. Other than that, it's just the same heroes we've seen for, I think, a couple of months now. Yeah. Like Tusk, okay, great. We've seen him before. Queen of Pain, all right, good. Keeping it standard.
Do people draft Tusk now? Is he a big deal?
Tusk is yeah, he's pretty good hero from what I understand.
He's a pretty good hero.
Yeah.
That's the rumor going around.
No, and this is actually an excellent transition into our next topic. One of my favorite things, one of the reasons that I love Evil Geniuses and that other team that keeps beating them is Team Secret, of course. Is I love creative drafts. I love especially going into a new meta and seeing what people can pull out. Obviously, some of it fails miserably, some of it does really great. But especially going into the international, it seems like we're talking about this is where people are saving their pocket picks. So going into the international specifically, last year, for example, we saw an explosion of Razor and Death Prophet. Our TZ ran Razor, like 80% of the games. We got card in chat. Maybe you can look that up. What are the sleeper picks going into the international? What can we expect to see more of, specifically that we haven't seen yet?
Trout, this is on you, buddy. Go for it.
It's so hard to predict that. There's just so many like this meta is so crazy because with the addition of all those like new items, people are still figuring things out, and I think people continue to figure out this patch till after TI. I really do. I think Techies is ridiculous right now. I think Tusk Techies lane is almost completely unbeatable. I don't know what actually deals with it unless you had like maybe a Quap in that lane to like blink away. But even then,
if you did a Shadow Demon to disrupt, maybe. But I mean,
but then you just hold your mind.
Then you have a Shadow Demon.
But then you just then you just hold your mind if you're Techies. Like I thought about that. I was like, why don't you pick Winter Wyvern and then you can just mitigate the physical damage? Well, then you just wait. You just wait with the mind. So it's I think Techies is. It's kind of a clowny pick at first, and when Secret picked it up, it was like, oh, wow, Techies, lol. But I think people are starting to realize that it's actually a ridiculously strong hero. And so I'd say watch out for that. I think Pugna is actually really good.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of kind of pushing strats with Pugna. I think his Death Ward is extremely, or not Death Ward, Nether Ward's extremely strong. If you go Octarine Core on him, you can always have a Nether Ward up, by the way. It's constant. The cooldown is less than the duration. So it's a pretty cool thing.
That, of
Just
course,
look
makes
at
someone like Alina very, very unviable. if,
yeah,
you've drafted Alina at that point, you're pretty much
or
killing yourself.
or Leshrac. I know that Cloud9
Leshrac.
really like to pick the Pugna specifically against the Leshrac, and I think their win rate's actually very high with Pugna.
Yes.
So that's one hero. Going through, I know it's not a hero that's like unpopular by any means, but I really think that Spirit Breaker is extremely good. Reason why we don't see him picked up too much anymore is because just been replaced by Tusk. Tusk is just better, and Tusk is just kind of like the premium off lane. So, but I mean, Tusk is probably gonna get banned out a lot. So,
what do you think about Viper and like Viper with a plug like that, the pushing strategy? You're not a fan?
Viper's just kind of. I mean, he's good if you can make sure you draft other mobile heroes on your team, because the problem with Viper is he's so extremely slow. He doesn't get around from lane to lane very easily, and so if you have people that can split push you very easily, and usually at the top level people can identify what kind of game you're going for, then you can abuse the fact that Viper just can't move around. Now, so if you have other heroes on your team though that can do them moving for you, like a Furion or maybe a Clockwork to have these long range ganks, then maybe you can. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but I'm just saying it's easily easily abusable.
Oh, Root Gaming picked up that pair in their first game, their first win of the series over Summer's Rift. But I mean, the difference was that in that draft, Summer's Rift gave up Tusk and Naga, which is one of those go-to support duos that EG likes to go to because it's so strong right now. So. I actually like the push strat, but I saw a lot of people specifically talking about how Root Gaming versus Summer's Rift signaled the return of Deathball in 6.84, and I don't think that's the case. Just because the way that Ice Frog changed the game, the importance of getting early kills. There's just so much more to gain from getting kills as opposed to pushing towers and snowballing a lead into objectives. That I really hope at least that we don't see a lot of Deathball.
Well, there was an 80-minute game in that series. Also, people need to remember that that's actually it was way longer than 80 minutes. What I'm talking about, this is like a 110-minute game. I'm insane. That was actually ridiculous. I think we're gonna Naga Core is gonna be a thing, whether it's it's played a little bit or it's played a lot. That'll be a thing. And with Octarine Core, it's so easy to split push and just kind of rat into like for literally ages. Then there's techies, which we already talked about, which means that you can't really push high ground if they do go for techies. There's really good wave clear. So I think Deathball will be in a couple of games. Will it be, I think, the mainstay of TI5? God, I hope not. Dear Lord.
Well, I guess go ahead.
Oh, I'm just one more point. I'm also surprised that Tide hasn't been picked up for so long.
Yeah,
I see this hero go through just peaks and valleys all the time, where he's picked up all the time, and it's usually the big tournaments where he starts to get noticed again. And I just think that his ult is just you can never go wrong in any lineup having that ultimate. It's always going to be useful. It was extremely popular last TI. It's kind of faded out, but I'd like to see that hero come back.
Well, speaking more broadly on the meta here, are you both happy with the meta coming into TI5? Because Valve has been doing some pretty heavy hammering on Dota 2 as of late. They've really been attacking the game, I guess you could say. How do you feel about the game coming into the biggest tournament of the year?
Techies. I mean, at least from a pub perspective, I think Tralf and I both agree Techies needs to be out of the game immediately.
Oh no, I wouldn't go that far. I just think the change they made to him was just ridiculous. His mind explodes way too fast, and I don't think that should be that way. I remember when I experienced it first in a game, and I thought that there was a bug. I was like, this can't be right, because I was like a ranged hero, and he put a mine down, and I just couldn't even walk away, and I would just still get hit. It just explodes too fast. But to answer your question, I think it's okay. The only beef I have with this last patch is that they came out with too many items in one patch. I think that was the biggest thing. I don't like having all those items, because it makes so many variables of which heroes can be viable. And I think it's like I touched on a point earlier. I think it's going to take a long time, even after TI, to really hone in on what are the actual best heroes. I think people have a good idea. Obviously, Lesh is extremely strong. Obviously, Tusk is good, etc., etc. But I think there's still going to be lots of figuring out to do.
The meta evolves during TI. That's the crazy thing. If you remember last year, we got a lot of good picks early on in the group stages, but the more the tournament went on, the more teams figured out what other teams like playing and what heroes were currently good for them or just in general. So that's another thing to keep in mind. It's just we'll see at the group stages one maybe part of the meta, and then as we move through the group stages into the playoffs, we're going to see maybe a whole different meta come into play, which I think is really cool. So,
How are you feeling about the Phantom Lance right now, by the way?
He's stupid good. Like
it's pretty good. Pretty good
Yeah.
hero.
he's really
Yeah,
good.
yeah, not bad.
I don't know if he's like
he's a very
top
strong
tier, but
hero.
I think he's very good. Yeah.
I just think that in the right hands, particularly with a lot of the really talented mechanical players, guys like Arteezy, Fear playing him. Also, gosh, who was it? Well, even no one on Vega. The outplay potential with Doppelganger alone is so big. That I think we've seen some really, really cool fights. And the good thing, I think, the good thing for the sake of Dota, everybody likes to make that argument, what's best for Dota, is that he's definitely not the same hero he was before, but I think he adds a lot of really interesting elements to the game because he does still push really hard. He does still farm really hard, but he's like a fighter with some real strong outplay potential. And that's obviously good from a spectator standpoint.
You know what they should do, Ian? Just buff Terrorblade again. Just,
Oh
crank him
yeah,
up. Crank him
no,
up.
who didn't fucking
Yeah.
love Terrorblade?
Yeah, yeah.
I love
I
that
think
hero.
I think PL's just got
I hate
PL's
you.
just kind of like a triple threat. He's got really good laning presence. He's very, very strong in lane. You can itemize him so we can actually fight and do stuff in the mid game. Whereas, like, say a hero like maybe anti-mage is not so good, or even a Naga like in the early to mid game isn't that great. But he's also very good late game. So he's got all three of these aspects going for him. So I expect to see a lot of PL.
And I will actually disagree with you, Trouf, about the introduction of items because I think if there's one thing I expect you guys could probably agree with, it's really nice. I think the hero pool has actually opened up quite a bit since 6.84. I mean, we're not seeing the sniper mid lane every single time. We're not seeing the Shadow Fiend mid lane every single time. Obviously, a lot of people are still picking him up because he's a great hero, but I don't know. It's challenging because I think watching the game, it's a little bit harder to predict what's going to happen. But it feels like, at least for me personally as a spectator, it feels like Dota 2 could be just about anything right now. It can be a 110-minute game. It can be a rapid push. It can be a gank fest. It can be a bloodbath. I think that's a really good thing, not just for the international, as we get ready to watch it, but just for the game in general. Is that people are going to be tuning into this who have never watched it before, and if they see a game that's like 40 kills in 40 minutes, that's obviously really good for growing our prospective audience.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, creating balance that's fair and well, balanced to be redundant for the players is one thing, and then also creating a way to change the game so it's appealing to the spectators is a completely different. So I would agree that making these changes to make it more entertaining for the viewers is always a plus. But in terms of keeping it extremely balanced and fair, I think when you put in tons of variables into one patch where you have so many ways to change the game and bring out heroes and people don't know, and the big thing I think is, like I mentioned, the items. I think it actually benefits the weaker teams because when it takes a long time for an entire community to realize what's strong and what's not. I think it generally favors the teams that are a little bit weaker, can maybe find that exploit that maybe the stronger team couldn't spot before. But
Sort of like Newbie did at the end of TI4.
with regard to what?
Drafting
push?
pure push and just ending games in like 12 minutes.
Well, that was actually Vici that was really known for that.
Vici was the Furion, and then Pugna pickers, and then Newbie just picked like Weaver a lot. I think they had a really competitive lineup. I don't know. I don't know if Newbie was the best team, but they won. So
Well, Hal performed really, really well.
yeah,
did.
exactly. Yeah.
Winning counts for something. Speaking of Newbie, by the way, we brought them up before as an invite. I believe this is the first time that TI has come around without every previous champion being invited directly to the tournament. Newbie was invited as a previous champion, even though their record this year perhaps doesn't quite reflect TI invite status. What were your thoughts on Newbie getting invited to the biggest event of the year?
I think it was expected, but I think people didn't want it to happen. I think a lot of people wanted, a team that maybe deserved their spot a bit more, whether that's Rave or another squad. I think the fact that Newbie got invited, it's a precedent, and I think it should be there, but it's just unfortunate that, they got invited with such poor performance and the way they've been playing recently. So I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I can understand why it happened, and it definitely makes sense to me. So
This is a hard question for me to answer because, I feel like if you win TI, you've kind of earned your invite. Regardless of whether they played badly or whatever, I still feel like they're the TI4 winners, and they deserve to be brought back. Touched really quickly on the point of Rave. I don't think that they should have got invited at all. So, for all the Rave apologists out there, I don't think that they earned it at all. But that's a whole nother topic.
No,
but,
and they didn't make it through the qualifiers, so further evidence of that.
I think the whole idea, because the main thing I've heard from people that wanted Rave to get invited was, but they've been together forever. I'm like that's as if that's some sort of like way to just get. I know tons of 2K players, I'm sure, that are on a team of 5 that have been together for 2 years. Does that mean they should get? That's just a silly argument, at least in my opinion. By the way, I just noticed my level on Dota 2 is 322. That's pretty awesome.
Wow.
Congratulations on your dubious achievement.
Congrats.
I mean, sir.
Well, talking about the teams that didn't make it, let's talk a little bit about the teams that did make it. And the first thing I want to address as we talk about, who's, as we sort of head towards prediction time for our top 3. I'm going to put you guys on the spot.
Oh, God.
Yeah. EG versus Secret. I mean, it's one of those matchups that you talk about because it just keeps happening. At this point, with both teams playing extremely well, both teams having been together for quite some time, and both teams obviously having an extremely strong grasp of the meta and extremely strong draft phases. Is this sort of the inevitable grand final of the international, or are we sort of jumping the gun on placing the laurels on their heads?
Again, it's very difficult to predict early on. Anything.
But I'm going to make you predict it, Tralf.
But I do. I actually think that EG and Secret would be in the grand finals. I think it's actually a kind of safe prediction among the community. They've just been playing the best, and I think that's all that really needs to be said. They've just been playing the best.
Do you think it's a safer prediction than EG versus DK was last year? Because I mean, EG and DK looked
because I mean
it's definitely safe.
I definitely would not have put EG in the grand finals at all last year. I think that. Yeah, I think they're actually stronger right now than they were last year. I think as they progressed through the tournament, they got stronger. But coming into TI, it didn't seem like they were as strong as they are now. So I think this is a little bit easier. Yes,
I'd agree.
That makes sense.
I think like you said, EG and Secret are just playing the best out of anybody. Like you look at some of the Chinese teams, and I think that's probably what a lot of people are thinking about is either it's going to be those 2 teams or one of the Chinese teams and another one of those teams, like EG versus IG, or probably not, but like Secret versus Vici or something like that. But I think EG versus Secret is, I think, the one that's most likely, because if you look at the Chinese teams, especially over the last couple of months, they haven't really played that well. The closest series that I think one of those squads had was Secret versus IG at Red Bull. And that was a really good series. And if IG could play as well as they played there, then maybe there's a chance. But as far as the rest of the squads go, I just... And we're not even really touching on like Cloud9 or Virtus Pro, who are also very good, and Empire, who are also amazing. So I just think that EG and Secret are too strong at this point. And I'd agree that's a safe bet, but I think it's a safe bet for a reason.
You mentioned Cloud9, Team Empire, Virtus Pro all have some very solid results this year, the 3 European teams. Which of those 3 do you guys think has the best chance of making run to the finals?
So you said Cloud9, Empire, and
Virtus Pro.
Virtus Pro. If you asked me like 2 months ago, I would have hands down said Empire. Like I was really excited for Empire when they got Yoki on their team. He was one of my favorite offlaners and still is. I was just extremely impressed by this guy. He was really fun to watch. But they've had like questionable results and losing to teams that they should not. People would argue should not lose to. So I hope that this maybe just kind of like. Not really taking it seriously because I want to focus on TI. I really wanted them to do well. And it always seems like when it approaches TI or some big tournament outside of Star Ladder, they just falter. Yeah. So, I mean, that being said, that's really hard. Those 3 teams are all very, very evenly matched. I'm still going to give it to Empire, though. I think that they have what it takes. I think they have a bit more talent on the team than compared to the other 2 teams.
And we were watching that series... Vici versus Empire. I can't remember for what tournament it was. It might have been even Star Ladder. And we were watching that at WCA, and we were, I think, really impressed with how they were playing. And I definitely agree that Empire is up there for me. I think it's more than likely Cloud9 out of those 3 teams, just because of... I think that's just it. I think they might be a little bit better in terms of individual skill, but that might be tough to argue. It's really hard for me. I think it'll be Cloud9 or Empire, but I have to give it to Cloud9, I think.
And it's interesting to hear you guys talk about Team Empire because for my money at least, I thought, maybe I'm being too hard on them, but when Virtus Pro reverse swept them, that's the proper tense, right? In the Esportal final 3-2, I was surprised that Empire sort of ran out of answers. They for me at least they seem to have sort of a single gear that they go to, and they run it extremely well. But maybe once again, it's just a symptom like Trout mentioned. It's just something about Empire. The past couple of years in a row, actually, they've looked like one of the most dominant teams in the world, and then just something happens. Either they don't know how to prepare for the main event, or maybe the chemistry falls off, or maybe the Russian diet of vodkas and potatoes gets to their stomachs. I don't know what it is.
Probably that one.
Probably that one, yeah. But to answer the original question, for me, it's Cloud9. And I think it's because, when the Great Western roster shuffle happened, Cloud9 came out surprisingly well. Like an NBA team that managed to really milk the free market. They picked up Misery and they picked up Big Daddy No Tail, and both of them have played so well under them. The issue for me, at least with Cloud9, is I feel like Cloud9 is sort of on the cusp of cracking that top two. We've seen them play extraordinarily well so many times, and there's just something about that team that they refuse to make the right decision at a critical moment in the game. They sometimes they don't, but we saw it in the Dota Pit final. It's like, they'll EE will go in too hard and feed, or like maybe the support just isn't there, or they make an aggressive thing and they get countered. I don't know what it is about Cloud9, because they got the supports, they've got the experience, and obviously they're really strong right now. There's just some sort of glass ceiling holding that team back from thinking up to the conversation.
Yeah, I don't think they have good direction. Like, I feel like they're the most unclutch team in the entire TI. They make really horrible decisions when it comes to late game, which is ironic because they're the team that reaches the late game more than anyone else. You'd think
they push for it. Yeah, they're shooting for the late game most of the time.
Whether they're shooting for it or it just happens because they can't close out a game, it's I guess another discussion. But
true.
I don't know. I don't really have high expectations for Cloud9 in general for TI. I think it's hard. With the shuffle you mentioned, I think getting No Tail was great. I think Aoi was I think getting Misery though was a downgrade from Aoi. I think Aoi's just better, and you can see his performance on EG is just phenomenal. I think they're absolutely crazy for dropping Aoi. I think it was the dumbest thing they possibly could have done to increase their chances of winning.
I don't think anyone will disagree with you at that point.
That was a really bad decision.
It was ridiculous to me. But I do think that when they got fought, this was a while ago though. This was actually a long time ago. But when they got Fata over Sing Sing, it was a massive upgrade. I think that Fata is one of the best mids in the entire world.
Yes,
and he's been on fire lately too. He's had some stellar performances.
That's true.
I think EG appreciates the move that Cloud9 made. They're okay with it. But we haven't mentioned one team. Only one team has not been referenced. We talked about the Chinese teams, Vici, IG, and LGD. Haven't mentioned the former Team Malaysia, now Fnatic. Kind of in a middle space there. Is there any chance this team, because they haven't, I don't think, looked too impressive all the time, any chance they have any kind of run here at TI?
They're really going to have to impress me in the group stages to even me to consider it. Like they're going to have to go like top 2 in their group for me to be like, wow, okay, there's a chance here. I honestly don't think so at all. I think you got Mushi, and that's great, but that's just not enough.
And for some reason, having Mushi used to mean a lot more. I mean, am I imagining that? Like shortly after Orange, shortly after Orange did so well, I don't think his stock could have been higher. And since then, it seems almost like Mushi is the problem with the teams that he's been on. He's been on so many squads that just haven't done well, and now that trend sort of continues, which is really strange.
He's definitely not the problem. I can say that. I watched when I was at Austin X Games, and I was after we got knocked out, I was casting their best of 3 with Alliance, and Mushi was a monster. I mean, he played out of his mind. He was in all 3 games, really. I mean, except maybe game 3, his draft was like probably what lost in the game, but in terms of his play, it's just he's really solid. Mm-hmm. I just don't know. I think they're kind of struggling with like who wants to play support. They switched it up a number of times. Mushi was even playing support like a couple months ago, and he actually owned. By the way, he was playing really, really well.
He did,
and I was surprised when I went back. He's like, "All right, screw it. You can't play carry. I'll play mid or whatever." But I think that they're just they're not consistent with their support play. I'd have to pinpoint on that, to be honest.
We've discussed every team now. All teams in the international. That
Congratulations,
means
guys. We did it.
We have to filter
Yeah.
through them
Did
and
it, boys.
parse down to the 3 teams, your top 3. Not necessarily in order, because that's difficult to pick who's going to win the final if the teams get there. But
EG.
the 3 teams, yeah. For those of you who don't have EG boxers on right now, the 3 teams who are going to be in the top 3 at TI5, and we'll start. Ian, since you volunteered your first team in EG, why don't you go ahead and kick us off there?
I'd be happy to, and I'm actually going to go out on a limb here and put them in order.
Wow.
I know. I'm a bold guy, as you can tell by the hair.
And the EG boxers.
Third place. And I'll give reasons. I'll be I not just rooting this in fanboyism. I think Invictus Gaming is going to take third place. I think that we've seen through several tournaments that of the Chinese sides, they're the most put together. And I think of the sides outside of Evil Geniuses and Team Secret, they, even when they make bad decisions, I think there's enough raw talent on that team that it seems to carry them through. We've seen that at a couple tournaments now, and I think the problem that they run into obviously is that they sort of lean on that raw talent. Chuan is actually obviously still a great support. June has been doing great in the off lane, and then Burning, is Burning. And Burning isn't what Burning used to be. I mean, there's still so much talent on that team that I think that it carries them, but then they hit that sort of brick wall when they meet a team that is both talented, makes great decisions, and has a better drafting phase from them. Second place, and I can feel the hate coming. I will put Team Secret, and I mean, I'm not gonna explain why specifically them. But I will say it in relation to the Team Secret Evil Geniuses matchup. I think that one thing that we've seen consistently from Evil Geniuses, we saw it after the International with patch 6.83. We've seen it several times since then. This is a team that, given the time to prepare and understand a patch, will eventually master it. When they won, I believe it was it ESL New York that they won after the International? Am I remembering that wrong?
Maybe.
It was whenever when it was, they won a major after that, before Arteezy and Zai made their exodus, and they were just masters of that patch. They had it figured out. They had the draft figured out. They had their map movements figured out. They had everything figured out, and it's just because they're a team that really focuses and studies the game for a long period of time.
Well, they won the Asia they won the Asia Championships, Ian.
Well, but that was after
They got second place
afterwards,
in New York,
yeah.
I think.
But the Asia champions took, I believe that's correct.
They got second place in New York, yeah.
But I feel like if there's an edge to be had in this series, because both teams are so strong. EG is a team that, given enough time, we've seen them get stronger. They threw away Game 4 by a hair, and then just made some terrible decisions at ESL Frankfurt to sort of give that title, not give the title, but hand over the title to Team Secret. And I think this is a team that, now that they've had some time and as talented as they are, they will have the patch figured out, and they will win the International.
A rousing explanation. Who's next? Who can take this ball from Ian and take it even further than he did? Who's bold enough?
Go ahead, Mott.
All right, so for top 3, I think I'll go with the standard answers of Secret/EG first, second. You arrange those two in whatever order you feel comfortable with, whichever order your fanboying heart desires. Because for me, it's too difficult of a series to call if they do, in fact, make it to the grand finals, which they probably should. I think they have a really good chance to do so. That third place team could be anybody, but I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say that it is a Chinese team, and it's going to be one of my favorite Chinese teams to watch, and that is going to be LGD. If there is a Chinese team that I fanboy over, it's LGD, just because I am a big fan of MMY. I also really like Yao as well. I think IG and Vici are also very, very strong. I think IG and Vici can replace LGD just as easily in that top 3 spot. I think even Cloud9 or Empire could replace them in that top 3 spot. So I'm kind of giving a non-answer here, but I think LGD will be in that third place spot, just because I think they're a solid team. They have some real veteran presence, and I think Yao, Xiaowei, and Xiaowei's, of course, he's a great leader, as we saw last year. I mean, he won TI4 for a reason. Like, he was a big part of the reason that newbie won. So I think LGD have that veteran experience. Obviously, IG have that as well, but I think it's going to be LGD third.
Probably the biggest reason why they won TI4 too. So
Yeah.
for my 3, I'm actually gonna do a little bit of the boring thing too, but I think it's gonna be. I think Secret's gonna win it. I think EG's will come in second, and I think I'll put Vici as third place. I think Vici is like probably the Chinese. I know they haven't looked that great lately, but when push comes to shove, I think they're gonna produce, and I think that they're probably the best drafting Chinese team. I really feel that way. I think that FY or who's it? I don't know if FY still does the drafting. I think he does, but whoever it is, I think that they draft better than the other Chinese teams. Frankly, as far as the first two though, EG and Secret, it could go both ways. I think. I just think Secret has one. Just they have they have winners on their team. Like Puppy is just such a winner. Like that, he just is very clutch. He's been here before many times.
S4 too, I think, really gives that team sort of a cutting edge and a big reason that they've done so well so far.
Yeah, and but I think it's going to come down to Puppy's draft. I think he knows what the team needs. I also think that RTC's drive is higher than ever. Whether it's deleting almost everyone off his friend list or not streaming because he's so focused, he really, really wants this. Maybe he might be offended by this, but I was with him right after the EG lost the third place match or whatever, their match to Vici, and he was devastated, man. You could see it. He was just very, very emotional, and it just crushed him. And I don't think he wants that again. Which is why his drive seems higher than ever right now. And I think that his play has been a reflection of that. Like he's been playing phenomenally in the last month and a half or whatever. I've been watching him, and people have been watching him.
Well, I mean, imagine Fear's drive though. I mean, he's tweeting that this might be his last international. I mean, the guy has come so close so many times, and he hasn't made it. What do you think of that?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, but I don't think he's as driven as Arteezy. I really don't. Yeah, sure, he could be driven. I think also, and a little criticism of EG, I think that when they get into high pressure situations, I actually think that PPD's drafts suffers a bit. In games like 3 and 4 and a best of 5 when it really matters and they're down, I see some really weird drafting things coming out from him. In case in point, the last DI4 when they drafted the last game against Vici, it was just really, really weird. There's been a couple other situations too, for example, ESL. So that could be another point, but it's very, very difficult to predict everything, and I think you just have to go based off of the results that we've seen and other factors.
Well, that about does it then. One last moment for a final thought.
One shining moment
as we go into the International 5, the 5th edition, with just a shining $17 million prize pool plus for those entering. A lot of money, by the way. If we haven't established that, I don't think we really talked about it much. It's a lot of money for this Dota 2 tournament. Just throwing it out there. Final thoughts, Ian.
On the International?
Yes. Your last ever thoughts on the tournament.
My last thing I'll ever get to say. Yeah. I don't know. I'm stoked as hell. There was a chance that we were gonna cover the International live, and it came down to either that or Evo. And I'm happy I got to go to Evo, but I'm sad that I won't get to be there because I'm seeing all the tweets and all the pictures. It's just, it's got to be such an electric environment, and I think it, people will say that a gigantic prize pool, devoted to one tournament is bad, but I think it brings out something really special. About Dota 2 teams that they know that there's so much on the line.
Greed.
It's so much goes. Yeah, that's what it. a little bit of respect too, just a tiny bit.
Okay, respect and greed. That's the headline. I think the motto for the International 5: respect, greed, and Dota.
Are we writing like an expose about like 1940s mobsters? Is that what we're doing here?
No, we're just talking about Dota 2, as we often do, and greed and money and $17 million. So tune in this very weekend and in the coming days to come. The coming days do often come to watch the International 5 and see how it all turns out and see just how wrong these predictions are. I can't wait myself. I look forward to just all sorts of erroneous predictions being made.
Trump was wrong.
And he was. Thanks to our guests for joining us to talk about Dota 2 and the International 5. If you like the show, follow the channel by all means. All VODs, interviews, and other good things are uploaded onto YouTube at daily.esports. Follow us on Twitter or Facebook at .esports. Thanks once again for watching. Back tomorrow with Richard Lewis and our League of Legends show following that. So long.